everyone, you're watching The Business of Law. I'm Lee Pacchia. Happy New Year, folks. Today I'm joined in studio by Bruce MacEwen. Bruce, of course, is the publisher of Adam Smith, Esquire, and he is a consultant to Big Law. Welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
So you wrote a really interesting piece recently talking about the need for cultural due diligence when entering into M&A transactions, particularly when the parties involved are law firms. Could you unpack that for us? What did you mean by cultural due diligence?
Well, you know, culture is a word I've struggled with in law land for a long time, Lee, because every lawyer talks about it as if it is the distinguishing thing about his firm, what makes his firm great, what clients appreciate, etc. I don't know about you, I've never heard a corporation in my life talk about their culture as a competitive advantage. It may be something they appreciate, they may like working there for that reason. Their customers do not care. Lawyers seem to think their clients care about their firm's culture. So I've struggled with this for a long time because if everybody's talking about it, but I'm not getting it, I'm thinking I must be missing something. So I decided to look at it through the lens of M&A, specifically law firm combinations. And what I began to realize was that when a lot of lawyers talk about culture, they're really talking about something like bon ami, you know, like they're good guys to have a drink with or whatever. That's not the culture that matters. I'm sure we've all been to good law schools and we can behave ourselves in, you know, polite company. The culture that matters really has to do with how decisions get made and what input partners have, how transparent or opaque the firm is, the extent to which consensus is developed or it's more of a command and control thing. None of these, understand, are good or bad. I mean, command and control can work for some firms. Total Grecian democracy can work for some firms. The issue arises in M&A when they're different, when the cultures are at odds. One of my favorite managing partners said, you know, there's any number of other managing partners I would love to have a drink with. I couldn't be a partner in their firm in a million years.
Huh. That's a great quote. Let's unpack this through a couple of examples. I guess the most notorious failure in this examination has to be a firms like Dewey and Ballantyne and LeBouef Lamb getting together, right? I mean, that's the worst one.
That's kind of Exhibit A.
What did they miss?
They rushed into it, which is frequently a mistake I think law firms make. Well, corporations can make it too, but I think law firms may be worse at it. You know, when law firms are looking at a merger, they tend to kind of look at, you know, conflicts, geographic footprint, comp, needs to be within spitting distance of each other, and like that's it. And they're missing the rest of the iceberg. If one firm is used to a very chaotic, frankly, management system like Dewey Ballantyne. Mort Pierce, you'll recall, their managing partner before the merger said, I basically can't stand management. So that was his attitude, total hands-off, chaos. LeBouef was, under Steve Davis, was a much more controlled place. And I think that they missed that in the combination because they were both so eager to get the deal done. You know, there is such a thing as deal momentum. It happens to lawyers. So
management style was the red flag in the Dewey LeBouef merger?
I think management style, but it also, of course, trickled down all the way through the rank and file of the partnership. I mean, if you, as I understand, if you told a Dewey Ballantyne partner that, you know, off-color jokes, for example, wouldn't really work at dinner, they looked at you like, you know, you're not going to tell me what to do. LeBouef was a much more buttoned-down place and more business-oriented.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about a dynamic like that and putting those, I mean, those are very different styles of behavior and culture and everything. You can see how it might be a problem throwing those two organizations together. Let me ask you, when you look at some of the big law tie-ups that have happened more recently, the deals that have resulted in Squire Patton and Locke Lord Edwards, do any red flags jump out at you? Do you think cultural analysis was done in those deals?
I think what those two deals do have in common, which it's easy to observe from the outside, is they were kind of distressed asset acquisitions. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all know Patton Boggs was having its issues.
For sure.
Thanks to the disappearance of earmarks, among other things, in Washington. And Edwards was having its own attrition issues. I think that the jury's obviously out on the Morgan Lewis Bingham deal, unfolding as we speak. But I think that there can be a rush to close and to get it done, and to think that that's going to solve all your problems. Or you can sort the problems out later, once we're together. It's kind of like having qualms during an engagement and deciding that, let's just go ahead and get married, honey. We'll figure this out later.
Mm-hmm. So when done right, how exactly is this analysis supposed to go? Walk me through this.
Boy, that's a fabulous question, Lee, because it is very difficult to get a handle on a firm's culture from the outside. Basically, unless you grew up in the place, it's hard to describe it. And even a lot of lawyers who have grown up in a place, they'll talk about it's collegial, it's collaborative. Well, that gets you precisely nothing. What you really need to know is something more granular. What kind of behavior gets rewarded? What kind of behavior gets penalized? Who's in the in crowd? Is there an in crowd? What do they really think about? What's their self-image? Dewey Ballantyne thought, rightly, we're a traditional white shoe, New York, top of the heap firm. LeBouef is scrappy, newcomer. Insurance isn't exactly global M&A. It was kind of like, a third generation Ivy Leaguer with a, really smart kid from Brooklyn. They're both very successful in their own way, but they're different ways. So I can't really answer your question with Squire Patton and Edwards Locke Lord, but I have my fingers crossed. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
I hope that they're beginning to learn from stories like Dewey LeBouef.
Yeah, it's tough to wonder whether it's more incumbent on the owners of these firms or the M&A advisors to determine what exactly their culture is. I mean, it's a hard thing to be so introspective. If you're running a shop and you've been there for years, I wonder how many big law management or executive committee types we could bring in here and say, what's the culture of your firm like? And how many of it would actually get it right at the end of the day?
They would be sputtering. They would be at a loss for words.
Think?
I think that one of the things you can do in these situations is look outside. Talk to journalists. Talk to headhunters, if there are any that you can talk to in true confidence, who are truly discreet. Talk to, people like you and me who've been around the industry, frankly. Talk to former partners, talk to clients. Because in my experience, the partners in the fishbowl at the time are going to have the most difficult time describing in any articulate way what their culture is really like. You need to look at it through different lenses.
It's a lot of work. Looking out at 2015, what do you see the new year bringing for big law?
The rich get richer. We've been seeing this since 2008 at least, Lee, but it just seems to accelerate every year when numbers are released. I see 10 to 15% of the industry, but a number of firms, that is, pulling away from the rest. And this gap, to my mind, has become all but unbridgeable. The firms that are pulling away are the usual suspects. They're the elite, prestige firms, Sullivan and Cromwell, Cravath, Paul Weiss, Simpson, Cleary, Davis Polk, the Magic Circle. You know who they are. And then there's everybody else.
That's a tough place to be.
It's a very tough place to be, because if you look at the structure of almost any number of industries across the broad economy, you see a structure where there are some small number of high-value, high-prestige firms. Think about watches, think about cars, think about clothing, think about wine and beer. And then there's a large large foundation of value firms, which would be Budweiser and Toyota and Gap, in the industries I just listed. There's damn little in between.
Right.
And it's an industry structure that the reason it's so common is clients get it. I want a t-shirt from the Gap, or I want a boardroom suit. I don't want much in between. And it's coming to law land is my thesis.
Are we going to see more large law firm mergers in the next 12 months?
Absolutely. Some kind of shotgun marriages, if you will, which, that's fine, saves a lot of people's jobs.
Beats the alternative.
It beats the alternative. But what I'm really waiting for in law firm combinations, Lee, is a transformative US-UK merger.
Really?
We haven't seen it yet. Hogan Lovells was as close as we've seen, but it's not really what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about Varines, because that's a topic for another day. I think
Right.
one or more of them is going to blow up in the next
Why
few
haven't we
years.
seen one yet, in your view? I mean, I've seen, last year we were talking about Freshfields making all these moves in North America, acquiring all this talent, but not going out and doing a full link up with another large law firm. What's preventing that, in your view?
I think it comes back to where we started, culture.
Totally unplanned, and yet here we are, full circle.
I didn't see it coming either, Lee. But the lockstep compensation culture of the premium UK firms is very different from the more meritocratic culture of US firms. I mean, even the US firms that will tell you that they're pretty much lockstep. It's clear, I think, to most people that underperformance is not tolerated for long. That's one of the other things I really need to say about culture before we close. In altogether too many firms, culture is code for we tolerate mediocrity. We don't give people the hard news. If that's your culture, I have no admiration for your culture, frankly.
Bruce, thank you for stopping and talking to us.
My pleasure, always.
That's Bruce MacEwen from Adam Smith Esquire. If you'd like to see more of the stuff we're working on, be sure to go check us out online. You can find us at mimesiswebtv.com. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitter under the same handle. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.